The Mafia boss arrived at his maid's funeral. Her 15-year-old son looked him in the eyes and made his first wish. Bring me my mother's killer, alive. What the boy didn't know was that finding the killer would uncover a betrayal neither of them saw coming. The rain fell like bullets on the roof of St. Mary's Chapel. Inside, 50 people sat frozen in their wooden pews, eyes fixed on the closed casket at the altar. Rosa Castellano's funeral should have been a quiet affair, a cleaning woman, a single mother, a woman who lived in the shadows. But today, the shadows themselves had come to mourn. Dante Moretti arrived 20 minutes late. The heavy oak doors swung open with a crash that made everyone jump. Water dripped from his black coat onto the chapel floor as he stood in the doorway, backlit by lightning. His face was carved from stone, jaw tight, dark eyes scanning the room like a predator counting prey. Whispers erupted instantly. That's him. The Moretti boss. Why is he here? Father Michael's hand trembled as he clutched his Bible. Dante's reputation preceded him like a storm, loan sharking, extortion, bodies that disappeared into the Hudson River. The priest had buried many men killed by Dante's orders, but never had the killer attended the service. Dante walked down the center aisle, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Everyone leaned away as he passed, as if violence itself radiated from his skin. He stopped 3 rows from the front, where a thin teenage boy sat alone, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Leo Castellano was 15 years old and had just become an orphan. Kid, Dante said quietly. Leo didn't turn around. His fingers gripped the edge of the pew until his knuckles went white. He wore a suit 2 sizes too big, probably borrowed, and his dark hair stuck up in the back where he'd forgotten to comb it. Leo, Dante said again, softer this time. Go away, Leo's voice cracked. You didn't even know her. I knew her for 18 years. That made Leo turn. His eyes were red and swollen, tears still streaming down his young face. You're lying. My mom cleaned office buildings. She never. She cleaned my home every Tuesday and Friday, Dante interrupted. For 18 years. She made terrible coffee but refused to let anyone else make it. She sang while she worked, old Italian songs her grandmother taught her. Leo's mouth opened, then closed. He stared at Dante with a mix of confusion and raw grief that made him look even younger than 15. Dante reached into his coat. Half the congregation gasped, hands moving toward phones to call 911. But Dante only pulled out a white envelope, worn at the edges, and held it toward Leo. She asked me to give you this if anything ever happened to her. Leo snatched the envelope with shaking hands and tore it open. Inside was a single handwritten note in his mother's familiar looping script. My beautiful Leo, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But you're not alone. Dante Moretti owes me a blood debt. When I was 19, I saw something I shouldn't have, something that would have gotten me killed. Dante protected me instead. He hid me, gave me a new identity, let me raise you in peace. Now I'm calling in that debt. Baby, he will grant you 4 wishes. Anything you want. Use them wisely. Use them to build the life I always wanted for you. I love you forever, Mom. The paper crumpled in Leo's fist as fresh tears poured down his face. Around them, people shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. 4 wishes, Leo whispered. Anything? Anything, Dante confirmed, his voice carrying through the chapel now. Your mother saved my life once. I told her I'd protect her son, if she ever needed it. That protection extends to whatever you ask of me. Father Michael stood up nervously from the front pew. Perhaps this conversation should happen somewhere more. No, Leo's voice cut through the chapel like broken glass. He stood up, barely reaching Dante's shoulder, and tilted his head back to look the Mafia boss in the eyes. I want everyone here to witness this. Dante nodded slowly. Then speak. The chapel held its breath. Leo wiped his face with his sleeve, smearing tears across his cheek. When he spoke again, his voice didn't shake. It was cold, hard, and far too adult for a 15-year-old boy. My first wish, Leo said clearly, loudly, so every person in that chapel could hear, is for you to bring me my mother's killer.
Alive.
I want to look them in the eyes before they pay for what they did. Gasps echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Father Michael made the sign of the cross. An old woman in the back fainted into her husband's arms. But Dante didn't flinch. He studied Leo's face for a long moment, searching for something. Doubt, fear, innocence. He found none of it. You understand what you're asking? Dante said quietly. Once you go down this road. She was shot in a parking lot buying groceries. Leo's voice finally broke, raw with pain. She was coming home to make my birthday dinner. Somebody killed her like she was nothing, and I want to know why. The rain hammered harder against the stained glass windows, and thunder rumbled like an answer from above. Dante placed his hand on Leo's shoulder. The gesture was surprisingly gentle for a man who'd strangled rivals with his bare hands. Then you have my word, Dante announced, loud enough for every witness to hear. On my family's name, on the blood debt I owe Rosa Castellano, I will find who killed your mother and bring them to you alive. This I swear. Leo collapsed back into the pew, the adrenaline draining from his body all at once. Dante turned to leave, but stopped halfway down the aisle. He looked back at the boy sitting alone in a borrowed suit, at the casket that held the only person who'd ever really loved that kid. Pack your things, Dante said. You're moving into my house tonight. I can't protect you if I don't know where you are. I don't need. That wasn't a request. Then Dante Moretti walked back out into the rain, leaving behind a chapel full of terrified witnesses and one grieving boy who'd just made a deal with the devil himself. What none of them knew, not Leo, not the congregation, not even Dante's own men waiting in cars outside, was that finding Rosa's killer would unravel a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of Dante's organization. And the truth would be far more shocking than murder. It would be betrayal from the one person Dante had trusted above all others. The basement of Dante's mansion didn't exist on any blueprint. 6 monitors glowed in the darkness, casting blue light across Dante's face as he leaned forward in his chair. It was 3 a.m., 8 hours since the funeral, and he hadn't slept. Behind him stood Vincent, his head of security, a man who'd seen 30 years of Mafia warfare and still got nervous when his boss went silent. Run it again, Dante said flatly. Vincent clicked the mouse. The footage restarted, a grainy parking lot camera showing Rosa walking toward her car, grocery bags in both hands. Timestamp, 6:47 p.m., 3 days ago. She reached for her keys, fumbled with the bags, smiled at something, probably thinking about Leo's birthday cake she was planning to bake. Then the world exploded. The muzzle flash came from off-camera, somewhere in the shadows between 2 cars. Rosa dropped instantly, bags scattering across the pavement. Milk pooled around her body. The shooter never appeared on camera. Dante's jaw clenched. Angle? Ballistics says the shot came from approximately 40 yards, elevated position. Probably the parking garage across the street. Vincent pulled up another window. We got footage from there too, but... Show me. The new video showed the garage's 3rd level. A figure in dark clothing moved quickly to a motorcycle, face hidden by a helmet. They were gone in seconds, license plate obscured by mud. Professional, Dante muttered. Military-grade planning. That's not all, boss. Vincent's voice dropped lower. The weapon signature came back. It's a Caracal CPX-3. Limited production, mostly used by private military contractors and syndicate enforcers. Dante finished the sentence, his blood turning to ice. Only 12 people in this city have access to those weapons. And 10 of them work for me. The room fell silent except for the hum of computer fans. Vincent cleared his throat. With respect, boss, maybe it was stolen. Someone trying to frame. No, Dante stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward. Look at the execution. Perfect distance, perfect angle, escape route plan to the second. This wasn't some amateur who stole a gun. This was someone trained by us. He began pacing, mind racing through possibilities. Rosa had cleaned his house for 18 years. She'd seen things, conversations, documents, faces of men who visited in the night. But she'd been loyal, silent as the grave. She'd never threatened to talk, never asked for more money or favors. So why kill her now? Pull the entry logs, Dante ordered. Everyone who's been in this house in the last 6 months. Cross-reference with anyone who has Caracal training. Vincent hesitated. Boss, that's going to include your inner circle. Marco, Tommy even. I don't care if it includes the Pope himself. Do it. As Vincent's fingers flew across the keyboard, Dante moved to another monitor showing the mansion's current security feeds. One camera displayed the guest room on the second floor where Leo had finally fallen asleep an hour ago, still wearing his funeral suit, curled around a pillow like a much younger child. Dante had promised that boy answers. Had sworn on blood and honor to deliver his mother's killer. But what happened when the killer turned out to be family? Got something, Vincent said suddenly. His face had gone pale. Boss, you need to see this. Dante crossed the room in 3 strides. On the screen was a report from the surveillance team that had been shadowing Rosa for the past 2 months. Dante hadn't ordered any surveillance on Rosa. Who authorized this? Dante's voice was deadly quiet. Vincent scrolled down. The authorization code at the bottom made his hands freeze on the mouse.
M. Marco Moretti.
Dante's younger brother. There's more. Vincent clicked through to another file, this one marked classified, family eyes only. Rosa made 7 phone calls to an unknown number in the week before she died. We traced it to a burner phone purchased in Queens. The buyer was caught on the store's security camera. The image loaded slowly, line by line. When Dante saw the face, his world tilted sideways. It was Marco. His own brother had been in contact with Rosa secretly, then had her followed. Then. When was this footage time-stamped? 2 hours before the shooting, Vincent whispered. Dante's hand moved to his waist where his gun usually sat, then remembered he'd left it upstairs. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Rosa hadn't just seen something she shouldn't have. She'd been trying to warn someone. And she'd been killed to keep her silent. Lock this room, Dante commanded, his voice like gravel. Nobody sees this footage. Not Tommy, not the council, and especially not Marco. As far as anyone knows, we have no leads. Boss, if Marco finds out we're investigating him, then we'd better find proof before he does. Dante headed for the stairs, then paused.
And Vincent?
Double the guards on Leo's room. If I'm right about this, that kid isn't just a witness anymore. What is he? Dante's eyes were black as midnight. Leverage. Leo woke up to sunlight burning through curtains that cost more than his mother's monthly rent. For 3 beautiful seconds, he forgot she was dead. Then reality crashed down like a wave, drowning him all over again. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to fall back asleep, back into the dream where Mom was still alive, still humming in the kitchen, still. A knock shattered the silence. Breakfast in 10 minutes, a gruff voice called through the door. Boss wants you fed. Leo sat up slowly, taking in his surroundings for the first time in daylight. The guest room was bigger than his entire apartment. Marble floors, a chandelier, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Even the air smelled expensive, leather and cologne, and something else he couldn't name. Money. It smelled like money. He found clothes laid out on a chair, jeans and a t-shirt in exactly his size. The thought of Dante's people going through his apartment, measuring his old clothes, made his skin crawl. He dressed quickly and opened the door. A man the size of a refrigerator stood in the hallway. Bald head, neck tattoos, a bulge under his jacket that could only be a gun. I'm Vincent, the man said, not unkindly. I'll take you down to eat. I'm not hungry. Wasn't a question, kid. Leo followed him through hallways that twisted like a maze. Paintings of stern-faced men in old-fashioned suits lined the walls. Dante's ancestors, probably. All of them looked like they'd kill you for looking at them wrong. They descended a curved staircase into a dining room with a table long enough to seat 20 people. Dante sat at the far end, reading a newspaper and drinking espresso. He didn't look up when Leo entered. Sit, Dante said, turning a page. Leo slid into a chair at the opposite end of the table, maintaining maximum distance. A moment later, a woman in an apron appeared with plates, eggs, bacon, toast, fresh fruit. The smell made Leo's stomach growl traitorously. "Eat," Dante commanded, still not looking up. "I told you I'm not. Your mother died 3 days ago. You haven't eaten since the funeral. You're 15 years old, and you look like a ghost." Dante finally lowered the newspaper, pinning Leo with those dark eyes. "Rosa would have slapped me across the face if I let you starve. So eat." The mention of his mother's name, spoken so casually, like she was just temporarily away, made Leo's throat tighten. But he picked up his fork and took a bite. Then another. Before he knew it, he was devouring everything on his plate. Dante went back to his newspaper. "How long do I have to stay here?" Leo asked between bites. "Until it's safe." "Safe from what?" "The killer's still out there. You haven't found." "I'm working on it." "That's not an answer." Dante folded his newspaper with deliberate care and set it aside. "You're in danger, Leo. Your mother's death wasn't random. Whoever killed her might come after you next to tie up loose ends. This house has 24-hour security, bulletproof windows, and guards who would die before letting anyone hurt you. Your apartment has a broken lock and neighbors who mind their own business. Where would you rather be?" Leo hated that the logic made sense. The rest of breakfast passed in silence. Afterward, Vincent escorted Leo to what Dante called the library, a room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather chairs that probably cost more than a car. Leo was told to stay there while the adults handled business. He lasted exactly 30 minutes before boredom and anger drove him to explore. The mansion was a labyrinth. Leo wandered through empty rooms, past more paintings and sculptures, and evidence of wealth so extreme it felt obscene. His mother had died with $17 in her purse. These people had gold faucets. He was about to turn back when he heard voices echoing from around a corner. "Can't keep the kid in the dark forever," that was Vincent. "I'll tell him when the time is right," Dante's voice, harder than usual. "And when's that?" "When Marco makes his move." "Boss, if the kid finds out you're hiding." "He's 15 years old and just lost his mother. He doesn't need to know his mother died because she was caught in the crossfire of a family war." Leo's blood turned to ice. A third voice joined in, younger, smoother. "Maybe we should have let her die years ago. Would have saved us this headache." "Watch your mouth, Tommy," Dante snapped. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Rosa knew too much. She was a liability. Hell, maybe whoever killed her did us a favor." The sound of flesh hitting flesh echoed through the hallway. A body hit the floor. "Say her name like that again." Dante's voice was barely above a whisper, "and they'll be fishing your teeth out of the Hudson. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Tommy gasped. Leo stood frozen in the hallway, his entire world collapsing for the second time in 3 days. His mother wasn't just killed by accident. She was murdered because she knew something about Dante's world. And Dante had known she was in danger. She died because of him. Leo backed away slowly, then turned and ran. He had to get out. Had to escape this house, these people, this nightmare. He sprinted through hallways, no longer caring about being quiet, looking for any door that led outside. He found one, a side entrance near what looked like a kitchen. His hand was on the doorknob when Vincent's heavy hand clamped down on his shoulder. "Where do you think you're going?" Leo spun around, eyes blazing. "Let me go." "Can't do that, kid. My mother died because of you people," Leo screamed. "Because she worked for him. She'd be alive if she'd never met Dante Moretti." Vincent's face softened slightly, but his grip didn't loosen. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." Tears were streaming down Leo's face again. "I want to go home." "You don't have a home anymore," Dante said quietly from behind them. Leo turned. Dante stood in the hallway, face unreadable. "The only thing keeping you alive right now is me," Dante continued. "So you can hate me all you want, but you're not leaving." Leo didn't speak to Dante for 2 days. He stayed in his room, picked at his food, and stared at the ceiling, counting the hours until he could escape. Vincent brought him books he didn't read and movies he didn't watch. At night, he heard footsteps outside his door. Guards rotating shifts, making sure their prisoners stayed put. Because that's what he was. A prisoner. On the third morning, Dante appeared at his door holding a jacket.
Get dressed.
We're going out. Leo looked up from his bed, surprised. Where? Your mother's apartment. You said you wanted to get some of your things. It was the first thing Dante had said that didn't sound like an order. Leo hesitated, searching for the trap, but found none. He grabbed the jacket. The drive to Brooklyn took 40 minutes. Leo sat in the back of a black SUV with tinted windows, watching the city blur past. Dante sat up front with Vincent driving. 2 more SUVs followed behind them, security, apparently. All this just to get my clothes? Leo muttered. All this to keep you breathing, Dante replied without turning around. They parked outside Leo's old building, a rundown brownstone with graffiti on the walls and a front door that never quite closed all the way. Leo had lived here his entire life. Now it looked like something from another world. 10 minutes, Vincent said, scanning the street. In and out. Leo climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, Dante and 2 guards following. The apartment door still had police tape across it from the investigation. Dante ripped it down without ceremony and pushed the door open. The apartment looked exactly as Mom had left it. Dishes in the sink from breakfast 3 days before she died. Her reading glasses on the coffee table. The birthday banner she'd been hanging for Leo still half-strung across the living room. Leo's legs nearly gave out. Take your time, Dante said quietly, stationing himself by the door. Leo moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching things that still smelled like her favorite sweater, her coffee mug, the puzzle book she'd been working through. He packed a backpack with clothes, grabbed a photo album, and was reaching for his mother's jewelry box when he heard it. A motorcycle engine. Revving.
Close.
Dante's head snapped toward the window. Vincent. The glass exploded inward. Gunfire erupted from the street below, bullets tearing through the thin walls of the apartment. Leo hit the floor as Dante dove toward him, covering the boy's body with his own. Plaster rained down around them. South window. 2 shooters. One of the guards yelled before his head snapped back, blood spraying across the wall. Vincent returned fire through the shattered window, shouting into his radio. We're under attack. Need backup at. Another burst of gunfire cut him off. The second guard went down clutching his leg. Move. Dante hauled Leo to his feet and shoved him toward the door. They burst into the hallway as more bullets chewed through the apartment behind them. The stairs are exposed, Vincent shouted, limping but still moving. Fire escape. They ran to the end of the hall where a window led to the rusty fire escape. Dante kicked it open and pushed Leo through first. Go. Straight down. Leo's hands shook as he climbed down the metal ladder, feet slipping on rain-slick rungs. Above him, Dante and Vincent provided cover fire. Below, the alley waited, dark and narrow and possibly filled with more shooters. He dropped the last 6 feet and landed hard on the pavement. Pain shot through his ankle, but he kept moving, running toward the street. A motorcycle skidded around the corner, blocking his path. The rider wore all black, face hidden behind a dark helmet. They raised a pistol, aiming directly at Leo's chest. Time slowed. Leo saw his mother's face, heard her laugh, remembered her last words to him that morning. I love you, baby. I'll be home soon. The gun fired. But Dante appeared from nowhere, slamming into Leo and sending them both crashing behind a dumpster. The bullets sparked off metal where Leo's head had been a second before. Dante's gun barked 3 times. The motorcycle rider jerked, dropped their weapon, and gunned the engine. They sped away, weaving through traffic, disappearing into the Brooklyn streets. Vincent came down the fire escape, breathing hard, blood seeping through his pants leg. Everyone alive. Barely, Dante growled. He grabbed Leo's face, checking for injuries. You hit. Leo shook his head, too shocked to speak. His ears rang from the gunfire. His whole body trembled. That wasn't random, Vincent said, watching the street. They were waiting for us. Dante's jaw clenched. Someone knew we were coming here, but we didn't tell anyone. Only the inner circle knew. Vincent stopped, understanding dawning across his face. Yeah, Dante stood, pulling Leo up with him. We have a leak. Sirens wailed in the distance. Dante's remaining security vehicles screeched into the alley, armed men pouring out. Get him back to the mansion, Dante ordered. Triple the security. No one in or out without my personal approval. And Vincent. Boss. Find out which of my people made that phone call. Because someone just tried to kill this kid on my watch. Dante's eyes were murderous. And when I find out who, they're going to beg for death long before I give it to them. Leo sat in the SUV as they sped away, his backpack clutched to his chest. The photo album had fallen in the alley. His mother's pictures, scattered across the pavement, trampled by boots and stained with blood. Everything she'd left him was being destroyed piece by piece. And now someone wanted him dead too. Leo refused to leave his room for 24 hours after the attack. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his hands, replaying the moment that bullet had missed his head by inches. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the motorcycle, the gun, the faceless rider who'd tried to end his life like it meant nothing. Just like they'd ended his mother's. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Not Vincent's heavy pounding or Dante's commanding knock. This was gentle, almost hesitant.
Lao.
Dante's voice came through the door. I need you to come with me. Go away. It's about your mother. Leo's head snapped up. He crossed the room and yanked open the door. Dante stood there looking like he hadn't slept, tie loose, stubble darkening his jaw, eyes bloodshot. What about her? I need you to remember something. The apartment, before the shooting started. Did you notice anything unusual? Anything out of place? Leo shook his head. It looked exactly like she left it. Why? Because whoever tried to kill you yesterday knew we'd be there. They were waiting. And I think your mother might have left us a clue about who's behind this. Dante paused. But I need your help to find it. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to Rosa's apartment building again. This time, a dozen armed guards surrounded the perimeter. Police had finished processing the scene and moved on. Vincent had made sure the investigation was buried under paperwork and jurisdictional red tape. The apartment looked like a war zone. Bullet holes dotted the walls. Glass crunched underfoot. The birthday banner lay torn on the floor, covered in plaster dust. Leo's chest tightened. Your mother was smart, Dante said, moving through the wreckage carefully. She knew things, saw things in my house. If she felt threatened, she would have left evidence somewhere. Evidence of what? That's what we're looking for. They searched for an hour. Vincent checked the furniture while Dante went through drawers and closets. Leo stood in the middle of the living room feeling useless and angry. His mother had been terrified enough to hide evidence, but not terrified enough to run? To take him away from all this. His eyes landed on the wall near the TV, a collection of framed photos chronicling his childhood. His first day of school. A birthday party at age 7. Him and Mom at Coney Island, both grinning with cotton candy. The frames hung slightly crooked now, knocked askew by the gunfire. Leo walked over to straighten them and noticed something odd. One frame, a photo of him at age 10, sat lower than the others. He lifted it off the wall. Behind it was a small hole in the plaster, carefully concealed. Inside the hole was a plastic bag. I found something, Leo said quietly. Dante was beside him in an instant. Leo pulled out the bag. Inside was an old cell phone, a cheap flip phone, the kind you buy, with prepaid minutes. She had a smartphone, Leo said, confused. Why would she hide this? Dante took the phone and powered it on. The battery was nearly dead, but still had enough charge. He navigated to the voicemail inbox. 3 saved messages. He played the first one on speaker. A man's voice, distorted slightly by a bad connection. Rosa, we need to talk about what you saw. Call me back. Tonight. The second message, same voice, more urgent. You can't ignore this forever. What you witnessed, it puts both of us in danger. We need to meet. Somewhere private. Dante's jaw clenched. Leo noticed his hand tighten around the phone. The third message made the room go silent. Rosa, I'm not asking anymore. End this quickly before he finds out. If Dante discovers what you know about the shipment, we're both dead. You understand? Destroy any evidence and keep your mouth shut. I'll handle the rest. The voice was calm, cold, completely devoid of the warmth from the first two messages. This wasn't a warning. It was a threat. Leo felt sick. Who is that? Dante's face had gone completely pale. His hand shook slightly as he played the message again, and again, as if hoping he'd heard it wrong. Boss. Vincent stepped closer, concern etched across his features. You recognize the voice. Yeah, Dante's voice was barely a whisper. I recognize it. Who? Leo demanded. Who threatened my mother? Dante looked at him, and for the first time since they'd met, Leo saw something he never expected to see in a mafia boss's eyes.
Fear.
Marco Moretti, Dante said. My brother. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Vincent cursed under his breath. Leo's mind reeled, trying to make sense of it. Your own brother killed her? Leo's voice rose. Your family murdered my mother because she saw something? She saw Marco stealing from me, Dante said, his voice hardening into steel. Moving product without my knowledge, skimming money, building his own operation inside mine. Rosa cleaned my office. She must have seen documents, heard phone calls. And Marco found out. So, he had her executed. Leo felt rage burning through his grief. Shot her in a parking lot like garbage. Dante pocketed the phone, his face transforming into something dangerous. Vincent, call an emergency meeting of the inner council. Everyone. Tonight. Tell them it's mandatory. Boss, if Marco knows we found evidence, then let him know. Let him sweat. Dante turned to Leo. You wanted your mother's killer delivered to you alive. You're about to get your wish. But first, I need to know which of my people are loyal and which ones are working for my brother. And if half your organization sides with him? Vincent asked. Dante's smile was razor-sharp and utterly without mercy. Then we're about to have a war. The abandoned steel factory smelled like rust and betrayal. Dante had chosen the location carefully, neutral ground, far from his mansion and Marco's known territories. The building had been dead for 20 years, its gutted machinery looming like metal skeletons in the shadows. Moonlight streamed through holes in the roof, casting everything in silver and black. Leo watched from a catwalk above as Dante's inner council arrived one by one. You shouldn't be here, Vincent had said when Leo insisted on coming. My mother died because of these people, Leo replied. I'm not hiding anymore. Now 12 men gathered on the factory floor below, their voices echoing off concrete walls. Leo recognized some faces from the mansion. Tommy with his slick-back hair and expensive suit, Lorenzo who always smelled like cigar smoke, Big Paul whose neck was thicker than Leo's waist, and Marco Moretti, standing slightly apart from the others, wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked like a younger, softer version of Dante. Same dark hair, same sharp features, but where Dante's face was carved from stone, Marco's had an easier charm. The kind of face that made you trust him right before he stabbed you in the back. Gentlemen, Dante's voice cut through the murmurs. He stood at the center of the factory floor, hands in his pockets, looking relaxed. But Leo could see the tension in his shoulders. Thank you for coming on short notice. This better be good, Dante, Marco said, checking his watch. Some of us have legitimate business to run. A few men chuckled nervously. Oh, it's good. Dante pulled out the flip phone. I found Rosa Castellano's insurance policy. The one she hid before someone put a bullet in her. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees.
Rosa.
Tommy frowned. Your cleaning lady? What does she have to do with? Everything. Dante played the third voicemail on speaker. Marco's voice filled the factory. End this quickly before he finds out. If Dante discovers what you know about the shipment, we're both dead. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Marco's smile never wavered. That's not my voice. Really? Dante took 3 steps toward his brother. Because I've been listening to your voice for 35 years. I think I know it. Anyone can fake audio these days. Hell, maybe Rosa was setting me up. She was always. Careful. Dante's voice went deadly quiet. Finish that sentence, and you won't leave this building breathing. Marco raised his hands in mock surrender. I'm just saying, brother, you're accusing me of murder based on a phone message that could be fabricated. Where's your proof? Where's your evidence? The surveillance you ordered on Rosa. The Caracal CPX, 3 registered to your weapons cache. The ballistics report that matches your personal ammunition. Dante's words fell like hammer blows. Should I continue? Lorenzo stepped forward, his face pale. Boss, are you saying Marco killed an innocent woman? I'm saying Marco is running a shadow operation, stealing from our family, and murdered the one witness who could expose him. Dante's eyes never left his brother. And I'm asking each of you to choose.
Right now.
Him or me. This is insane. Marco laughed, but it sounded forced. Dante, you're paranoid. You're seeing conspiracy, where there's just. I'm seeing my brother's treachery. Dante pulled out his gun and aimed it at Marco's head. Last chance. Confess, and I'll make it quick. Marco's smile finally died. His hand moved toward his jacket. Don't. Tommy's gun was already out, aimed at Marco.
Sorry, boss.
But family's family. Marco's face twisted. Family? Dante's been slipping for years.
Weak.
Sentimental. Protecting cleaning women and street kids while our enemies circle like sharks. He looked around the room, his voice rising with desperate fervor. Half of you agree with me. We need new leadership. Younger blood. Is that why you tried to kill Leo yesterday? Dante asked coldly. Leo's breath caught. Below, several men looked up toward the catwalk where he hid in shadows. The kid's a loose end, Marco said. Rosa told him things. He's a liability. He's 15 years old. He's a witness. Marco pulled his gun finally, swinging it toward Dante. And you're too soft to do what's necessary. The factory exploded into chaos. Big Paul drew his weapon and shot at Tommy. Lorenzo dove behind a rusted machine. Half the men opened fire while the other half scrambled for cover. Bullets ricocheted off metal, sparks flying in the darkness. Dante tackled Marco, both men crashing to the concrete floor. The gun skittered away. Vincent, Dante's voice roared above the gunfire. Get the kid out. But Leo couldn't move. He watched in horror as the Mafia family tore itself apart. Blood splattered across concrete. Men he'd seen eating breakfast in Dante's dining room were killing each other over loyalty and betrayal and money. A bullet struck the catwalk railing inches from Leo's hand. Vincent appeared beside him, grabbing his arm. We're leaving.
Now.
Below, Dante had Marco by the throat, slamming his head against the floor. But 3 of Marco's men were closing in, guns raised. Dante. Leo screamed. Dante looked up just as the first bullet hit him in the shoulder. He spun away from Marco, clutching the wound, blood seeping through his fingers. Marco scrambled to his feet, grabbed a fallen gun, and aimed at his brother's head. Tommy shot Marco's hand. The gun flew away. Marco howled in pain. Go!
Tommy yelled at Dante.
I'll hold them. Dante staggered to his feet, pressing his hand against the gunshot wound. He looked up at the catwalk where Vincent was dragging Leo toward the exit. The south door. Dante shouted, running toward a different exit. Meet at the safe house. More gunfire erupted. Leo saw Tommy go down, saw Big Paul fall clutching his chest. The factory had become a slaughterhouse. Vincent pulled Leo through a door and into the night. They ran to a waiting car, tires screaming as they peeled away. Behind them, gunfire continued to echo through the steel factory like thunder. Is he alive? Leo asked, breathing hard. Did Dante make it out? Vincent's face was grim as he drove, phone pressed to his ear, getting no answer. I don't know, kid. I honestly don't know. Leo looked back at the factory, at the muzzle flashes lighting up the windows like fireworks. He'd asked Dante to find his mother's killer. Instead, he'd started a war. The safe house was a cabin that time had forgotten. It sat at the end of a dirt road 2 hours north of the city, surrounded by woods so thick the trees blocked out the stars. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged, and Leo counted at least 3 broken windows. Vincent had called it secure, Leo would have called it a shack. But they were alive. That was something. Leo sat on a threadbare couch while Vincent paced the floor, phone pressed to his ear, trying and failing to reach Dante for the 100th time. It had been 6 hours since the factory. 6 hours of silence and static, and the growing certainty that Dante Moretti was dead. Anything?
Leo asked.
Vincent shook his head, jaw clenched. Phones are either off or destroyed. None of our people are answering. It's like everyone just vanished. Maybe Marco killed them all. Or maybe they're hiding. Smart ones go dark after a bloodbath like that. Vincent finally stopped pacing and dropped onto a chair that groaned under his weight. We should have seen this coming. Marco's been building his crew for months. We were just too blind to notice. Leo pulled his knees to his chest. The cabin was cold. Vincent had said no fire, no lights that could be seen from the road. They sat in darkness, broken only by moonlight through dirty windows. My mom knew, Leo said quietly. She knew Marco was dangerous, and she tried to warn Dante. That's why she died. Rosa was brave. Braver than most of the men I work with. She was scared, Leo's voice cracked. I heard it in that voicemail. She was terrified, and she didn't tell me, didn't take me away from all this. She just stayed. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes staying is the bravest thing you can do. A noise outside made them both freeze. Footsteps on the porch. Slow, uneven, dragging. Vincent had his gun out instantly, moving to the window. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. If Marco had found them. The door burst open. Dante stumbled inside, barely staying upright. His shirt was soaked in blood, his face gray with pain. He took 2 steps and collapsed. Boss. Vincent caught him before he hit the floor, lowering him down carefully. Leo. First aid kit. Under the sink. Leo ran, hands shaking, yanking open cabinets until he found a dented metal box with a red cross on it. He brought it back to find Vincent cutting away Dante's shirt. The gunshot wound in Dante's shoulder still bled sluggishly. But worse was a deep gash across his ribs. Knife wound, Leo realized with horror. Dante had been stabbed too. Going to need stitches. Dante gasped, his face twisted in pain. Vincent. You remember field medicine? It's been 20 years, boss. Then you'd better remember fast. Leo watched, feeling useless as Vincent worked. He cleaned the wounds with whiskey that made Dante bite down on a leather belt to keep from screaming. Then came the stitches, crude, painful, but functional. By the time Vincent finished bandaging everything, dawn was breaking through the windows. Dante lay on the couch, conscious but barely. His breathing came in shallow gasps. How many did we lose? He asked. Don't know yet. Tommy was still alive when we left. Big Paul took 2 bullets. Lorenzo. Vincent's voice caught. Lorenzo didn't make it. Dante closed his eyes. Good man. Had 3 kids.
Yeah.
Silence settled over the cabin like a shroud. Leo sat against the wall, watching Dante's chest rise and fall, each breath looking like it cost him everything. This place, Dante said suddenly, his eyes opening to stare at the ceiling. Your mother owned this cabin, Leo.
Did you know that?
Leo shook his head. Her grandmother left it to her. Rosa used to bring you here when you were small. Maybe 5, 6 years old. Dante shifted slightly, wincing at the pain. I came here once. She'd called me, said someone was following her. Turned out to be nothing, paranoid neighbor. But I drove up to check on her anyway. Why? Leo asked. Why did you care so much about a cleaning woman? Dante's laugh was bitter. Because she saved my life when she should have let me die. Vincent glanced at Leo, then back at Dante. Boss, maybe you should rest.
No.
He deserves to know. Dante turned his head to look at Leo. I was 12 years old. Marco was 10. Our father was teaching us the family business, which meant teaching us how to hurt people who crossed us. One day, he decided Marco needed to prove himself. He gave him a gun and told him to shoot a man who'd stolen from us. Leo felt cold creep up his spine. Marco couldn't do it. Started crying, dropped the gun, embarrassed our father in front of everyone. So that night, Marco came into my room while I was sleeping, pressed a pillow over my face, tried to suffocate me.
Jesus, Vincent whispered.
Your mother was cleaning the house late. She heard me struggling, came running, pulled Marco off me. She was 19 years old and probably weighed 100 pounds, but she stood between us and told Marco if he touched me again, she'd tell her father everything. Dante's eyes grew distant. Marco ran.
Never spoke about it.
But I knew from that moment that my own brother wanted me dead. And Rosa knew it too. So you protected her, Leo said. I gave her a new identity, a safe place to live, a job that kept her close enough that I could watch over her. I thought if she stayed in my orbit, Marco wouldn't dare touch her. Dante's face twisted with guilt. I was wrong. I underestimated how patient he could be, how long he'd wait for the perfect moment. She died because of me, Leo realized, the truth crushing down on him. Marco killed her to hurt you. No, Dante's voice was firm despite his weakness. Marco killed her because she was about to expose him. You were just collateral damage he was willing to accept. The words should have made Leo feel better.
They didn't.
Outside, a car engine rumbled in the distance. Vincent was at the window instantly, gun raised. The engine grew louder, then stopped. We've got company, Vincent said, voice tight. Multiple vehicles. Armed men. Dante tried to sit up and failed, groaning. How many? At least a dozen. Boss, we can't fight that many. Leo looked at Dante, bleeding and broken on the couch. Looked at Vincent, loyal but outnumbered. Then looked at his own empty hands. A knock echoed through the cabin. Polite. Almost friendly. Dante. Marco's voice called from outside. I know you're in there, brother. Let's talk like civilized people. Dante's hand moved to his gun. Vincent shook his head frantically. Come on out, Marco continued. Unless you want me to burn this cabin down with everyone inside. Your choice. Marco didn't wait for an answer. The cabin door exploded inward, kicked off its hinges by two massive men in tactical gear. Sunlight poured in, blinding after the darkness. Vincent raised his gun, but 3 red laser dots appeared on his chest instantly. Don't, one of the men said. Drop it. Vincent's gun hit the floor with a clunk. Marco Moretti walked in like he owned the place, stepping over the broken door with a smile on his face. His right hand was bandaged from where Tommy had shot him, but he held a pistol comfortably in his left. Behind him, armed men filled the doorway. There you are, Marco said cheerfully. I've been looking everywhere for you, brother. Dante tried to sit up on the couch, but his body betrayed him. He managed to prop himself on one elbow, blood seeping through his bandages. Come to finish the job.
Finish. Marco laughed.
Dante, I'm here to save you from yourself. Look at you, bleeding out in Rosa's old cabin like some wounded dog. This is what sentimentality gets you. Sentimentality didn't shoot me. Betrayal did. Potato, potato. Marco's eyes swept the room, landing on Leo pressed against the wall. And there's the little problem himself. Hello, Leo. Sorry about your mother. Truly. She was actually quite good at cleaning. Leo felt rage burn through his fear. You murdered her. I eliminated a liability. There's a difference. Marco moved closer to Dante, keeping his gun trained casually in his direction. She saw documents she shouldn't have. Made copies, apparently. Was going to run to the feds with evidence of our operations. What did you expect me to do? Send her a strongly worded letter? She was under my protection, Dante said through gritted teeth. Your protection? Marco's voice rose. Brother, you've gotten so soft you're protecting maids and adopting street kids. Meanwhile, I've been actually running this organization. Building connections, moving product, making real money while you play at being some kind of, what? Robin Hood of Brooklyn? You're stealing from our family. I'm expanding our interests.
The old ways are dead, Dante.
Father's rules don't work anymore. We need to adapt or we'll be crushed by the cartels, the Russians, the Chinese. I'm trying to save us. Dante's laugh was bitter. By killing innocent women? By starting a civil war? By removing an obsolete leader? Marco's face hardened. You should have died in that factory. That was the plan, clean, quick, blame it on an outside hit. But you always were hard to kill. Father used to say you had the devil's own luck. So what now? Vincent asked from across the room. You kill us all in this cabin? How's that going to play with the family? Marco's smile returned. Oh, Vincent. Sweet, loyal Vincent. You're thinking too small. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. I'm not just taking over the family business. I'm taking over the entire city. He turned the phone around. On the screen was a news broadcast, live footage of the downtown Marina Club, cameras and reporters crowded around the entrance. The cheer read, breaking, new Mafia leader emerges. Marco himself appeared on screen from earlier that morning, standing at a podium looking somber and authoritative. My brother Dante Moretti has been leading our family down a dangerous path, Marco's recorded voice said. His erratic behavior, his paranoia, his violence, it's brought chaos to our streets. Today, I'm taking control to restore order and peace. You're holding a press conference? Dante stared in disbelief. About the Mafia? I'm legitimizing us, Marco said proudly, announcing that the Moretti family is entering legitimate business. Construction, real estate, waste management. All legal. All respectable. His smile turned sharp. Of course, the illegal operations continue underground, but the public doesn't need to know that. They just need to see a clean face they can trust. On the phone screen, a reporter asked a question Leo couldn't hear. Marco's recorded voice continued. I'm also calling on my brother to surrender peacefully. He's wounded, desperate, and has kidnapped a 15-year-old boy named Leo Castellano. If Dante doesn't turn himself in and release the child within 48 hours, I will have no choice but to take necessary action to protect the city. Leo's blood ran cold. Kidnapped? I'm not. According to 12 witnesses at your mother's funeral, Dante Moretti forced you to leave with him. You've been missing ever since Marco pocketed his phone. The police have issued a warrant. The FBI is investigating. Every cop in New York is looking for you, kid. And when they find you with my violent, unstable brother, he shrugged. Well, that just proves my story, doesn't it? You're framing him, Vincent said. I'm controlling the narrative. Something Dante never understood how to do. Marco gestured to his men. Tie them up. All three of them. We're taking them downtown. Downtown. Dante struggled against the men who grabbed him, but his injuries made him weak. What are you? I'm giving the people what they want. A villain to hate and a hero to cheer for. You're going to confess everything on camera, the murders, the kidnapping, the violence. You'll beg for forgiveness and name me as your successor. Then you'll be taken into custody where you'll tragically die of your injuries before trial. No one will believe. Everyone will believe it. I've spent 6 months building this narrative. Planting stories, bribing journalists, positioning myself as the reasonable one-inch. Marco leaned close to Dante's face. You thought this was about money? About power? Brother, this is about legacy. Our father ruled through fear. You ruled through violence. But I'm going to rule through public approval. I'll be the gangster who went straight, the criminal who redeemed himself. They'll write books about me. He straightened up, addressing his men. Bind them tight. We move in 10 minutes. And someone call the police. Tell them we've located the kidnapped boy and are bringing him to safety. As rough hands grabbed Leo, forcing his wrists together with zip ties, he caught Dante's eyes across the room. The Mafia boss looked defeated for the first time since they'd met. Not by the bullets or the betrayal, but by the realization that Marco had outplayed him completely. Your move, brother, Marco said, heading for the door. Oh, wait, you don't have any moves left. The men dragged them outside where news vans were already arriving, Cameras ready to capture the moment Marco Moretti became the hero who rescued a kidnapped child from his dangerous brother. Leo realized with horror that Marco had already won. And Dante's first wish, to bring Rose's killer to justice, was about to turn into a public execution. The police safe house was supposed to be sanctuary. It sat in a quiet neighborhood in Queens, a brick townhouse identical to every other on the block, unmarked cars parked strategically on the street. Detective Sarah Chen had personally escorted them there after Marco's men released them at the Marina Club in front of a dozen cameras. Protective custody, she'd called it. Until we sort out what's really happening. That was 12 hours ago. Now Leo sat in a small bedroom on the second floor, hands finally free of zip ties, watching the street through curtained windows. Dante was downstairs being questioned by detectives. Vincent had been taken to a different location, separated from them for their own safety. Leo didn't feel safe. He felt like a mouse in a trap, waiting for the spring to snap. A knock on the door. Detective Chen entered carrying a tray with sandwiches and water. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with gray streaking through her black hair. "Eat something," she said, setting the tray on a small table. "You look like you haven't eaten in days." "I'm not hungry." That wasn't a request. She sat in the chair across from him. "Leo, I need you to tell me the truth. Did Dante Moretti force you to go with him after your mother's funeral?"
No.
Multiple witnesses say. Multiple witnesses saw what they expected to see. Leo met her eyes. "My mother knew Dante. She left me in his care. I went with him because I had nowhere else to go. And the shootings? The warehouse battle? The violence? That was Marco, Dante's brother. He's the one who killed my mom. He's the one trying to kill me." Chen sighed, pulling out a notepad. "Leo, I've been investigating the Moretti family for 8 years. I know Dante's reputation. The bodies, the brutality, the fear he inspires. Marco's story, that Dante's become unstable and dangerous, it fits the pattern." "Then you don't know anything." Leo's voice was fierce. "Marco's been playing everyone. He murdered my mother to cover up his crimes, tried to kill me twice, and now he's using the police to finish what he started." "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth." Chin studied him for a long moment. "You care about him?"
Dante.
"After everything you've seen." Leo didn't answer. Did he care? The man was a killer, a criminal, someone who'd built an empire on violence and fear. But he'd also protected Leo, avenged his mother, and showed more honor than his own brother ever had. "My mom saved his life once," Leo said quietly. "When they were both kids." Dante never forgot that. He's a lot of things, bad things, but he keeps his promises. And Marco. Marco is worse. He just hides it better. Chin closed her notepad, expression softening slightly. "Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning." She left, locking the door behind her. Leo heard her footsteps descend the stairs, heard muffled voices from below. He moved to the window and peered through the curtains. The street looked normal. Too normal. No news vans now, no cameras. Just quiet houses and streetlights, and a black SUV parked 3 houses down that hadn't been there before. Leo's stomach dropped. He pressed his ear against the door, listening. Downstairs, Detective Chin was talking to someone on her phone, voice low. "Understand, but we had a deal. The money's already been transferred." Leo's blood turned to ice. "No, he hasn't said anything useful." "Yes, the brother too. They're both secure." Footsteps on the stairs. Multiple people moving fast. Leo looked around frantically. The window? 2-story drop onto concrete. The door? Locked from outside. He was trapped. The door burst open. 2 men in police uniforms entered, but their faces were wrong. Not cops Leo had seen earlier. New faces. Hard faces. "Let's go, kid." Quietly. "Detective Chen." Leo screamed. "Help." One man clamped a hand over Leo's mouth while the other grabbed his arms. Leo fought, kicking and thrashing, but they were too strong. They dragged him into the hallway. Downstairs, he caught a glimpse of the living room. Dante was on the floor, unconscious, blood trickling from his temple. The real detectives who'd been guarding them were gone or dead. Detective Chin stood with her back to the stairs, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, I have him," she said. "Bringing him now." She'd sold them out. Marco had bribed the police. Just like he'd bribed journalists and politicians and anyone else who could help him win. The whole system was corrupted, and Leo had walked right into the trap. They dragged him out the back door to a waiting van. He was thrown inside, hands zip-tied again, a bag pulled over his head. The engine started. "Where are you taking me?" Leo demanded, voice muffled through the fabric. "Marina Club," one of the men answered. "Boss wants you front and center for tomorrow's show." "What show?" "Your confession. You're going to tell the world that Dante Moretti kidnapped you, threatened you, killed your mother. You're going to beg Marco to save you." "I'll never." A fist connected with his stomach, driving the air from his lungs. Leo doubled over, gasping. "You'll do exactly what we tell you," the voice said. "Or we'll make sure you die very slowly. Understand?" Leo couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Through the pain, he heard sirens in the distance. Police responding to the safe house? Or more of Marco's people? The van turned sharply, throwing Leo against the wall. His head cracked against metal and stars exploded behind his eyes. When the darkness took him, his last thought was of Dante, unconscious on that floor, wounded and alone. They'd both trusted the system to protect them, and the system had fed them to the wolves. 48 hours later, Leo woke up in hell. He was in a chair, hands bound behind him, in what looked like a warehouse office. His face throbbed, where someone had hit him. His ribs ached. Through a grimy window, he could see the shipping containers of a cargo port stacked like metal mountains. The door opened. Marco walked in carrying a bottle of water and a smile. "Good morning, Leo. Ready to become famous?" Behind him, camera equipment was being set up. Lights, microphones, a professional crew. This wasn't just a threat. Marco was going to broadcast Leo's forced confession to the entire world. And there was nothing Leo could do to stop him. The camera's red light blinked like a demon's eye. Leo sat bound to the chair, blood dried on his face, his body aching from 2 days of captivity. Marco had kept him alive but not comfortable, just enough food and water to keep him conscious, just enough beatings to remind him who was in control. Now, under harsh white lights, makeup artists tried to cover the worst bruises. A woman dabbed powder on Leo's split lip while Marco watched from behind the camera crew, checking his own reflection in a monitor. "Remember," Marco said, voice almost gentle, "you're a traumatized boy who's been rescued from a monster. Tears are good. Fear is good. Just stick to the script, and this will all be over soon." "I'm not reading your script," Leo said through swollen lips. Marco's smile didn't waver. He nodded to one of his men, a brute named Sal who'd been particularly enthusiastic with his fists. Sal walked over and pressed a gun barrel against the back of Leo's head. "You'll read it," Marco said. "Or Sal will redecorate this office with your brains, and will tell the world you were shot trying to escape. Your choice." Leo's heart hammered. The cold metal against his skull felt impossibly real, impossibly final. He was 15 years old and about to die or become a liar who destroyed the one person who'd tried to keep his mother's promise. Some choice. 5 minutes to broadcast, a technician called out. Marco checked his watch, then his phone. Perfect timing. Every major network has picked up the feed. We're going to have an audience of millions. "Why?" Leo asked. "You've already won. You have the family, the business, the city. Why do you need this?" Marco crouched down to Leo's eye level. "Because, kid, I don't just want to win. I want to be beloved. Your testimony makes me a hero, the good brother who saved an innocent child from the bad brother's violence. After this, I'm untouchable. No prosecutor will come after me. No rival will challenge me. I'll be the reformed gangster, the redemption story. I'll run this city with a smile and a handshake instead of a gun." And Dante? Dead within the week. They found him unconscious at the safe house, remember? Resisting arrest, they'll say. Shot while trying to escape. Tragic but necessary, Marco stood. The old world dies with him. My world begins with you. 3 minutes, the technician called. Marco walked to his mark in front of the camera, straightening his tie. Behind him, through the office window, Leo could see the shipping port, container stacks creating steel canyons, cranes looming like mechanical giants. The sun was setting, painting everything in orange and shadow. 2 minutes. Sal pressed the gun harder against Leo's skull. You gonna cooperate? Leo closed his eyes. He thought his mother, shot in a parking lot for knowing too much. Thought of Dante, bleeding in a cabin, wounded but unwilling to break. Thought of Rose's letter. Use your wishes wisely. Use them to build the life I always wanted for you. She'd wanted him to have a good life. A safe life. A life free from this violence. But she'd also taught him to stand up for what was right, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. 1 minute. Last chance, kid, Marco said from his position. Read the script and live, or die right here on camera. What's it gonna be? Leo opened his eyes and looked directly at Marco. My mother died protecting the truth. I'm not going to dishonor her by lying. Marco's face darkened. Sal. Wait. A voice shouted from outside the office. The door burst open, and one of Marco's lieutenants ran in, face pale with panic. Boss, we have a problem. Multiple problems. The perimeter's been breached. We've got incoming. Gunfire erupted outside, sharp and sudden. The camera crew dove for cover. Sal spun toward the door, gun swinging away from Leo's head. Through the window, Leo saw figures moving between the shipping containers. Muzzle flashes lit up the growing darkness. Marco's guards were falling back, shouting into radios, returning fire at an unseen enemy. How many? Marco demanded, pulling his own weapon. Dozens. Maybe more. They're everywhere.
Who?
Police? Feds?
No, boss.
It's them. The loyalists. The ones who escaped the factory. The lieutenant's voice shook. They've come for you. And then Leo heard it, a voice amplified by a megaphone, echoing across the shipping port like the voice of God himself. Marco Moretti.
Dante. Alive.
And royally pissed off. You want a war? You've got one. Come out and face me, you coward. Marco's face twisted with rage and something else, fear. Real, genuine fear.
How?
He was unconscious. The cops had him. Apparently not anymore, Sal muttered. Outside, the gunfight intensified. Marco's men were outnumbered and outflanked. The loyalists had come with everything they had, not just to rescue Leo, but to end this civil war once and for all. Marco grabbed his radio. All units, converge on my position. Kill anyone who's not with us. And someone bring me Dante Moretti's head. He turned to the camera crew cowering on the floor. We're still broadcasting. Get those cameras up. America's going to watch me kill my traitor brother live. But the crew was already running, equipment abandoned, fleeing for their lives. Marco screamed in frustration and kicked over a camera. He grabbed Leo's chair and dragged it to the window. You want your precious Dante? Come and get him. Outside, the gunfire stopped for a moment. Then Dante's voice came again, closer now, somewhere in the maze of containers. Let the boy go, Marco. This is between us. Nothing's between us anymore, Marco shouted back. Everything's mine now. The family, the city, the future. You're just a ghost refusing to die. Then let me be a ghost who haunts you forever. A single gunshot rang out. The window exploded inward, showering them with glass. Sal went down with a bullet in his leg, screaming. Marco hit the floor, dragging Leo's chair down with him. The office door kicked open again. But this time it wasn't one of Marco's men. Vincent stood there, bloody but breathing, gun raised. Behind him, Tommy limped forward on a makeshift crutch, alive despite the bullets he'd taken at the factory. Sorry we're late, kid, Vincent said. Traffic was hell. Marco scrambled backward, gun swinging between them. You're all dead men. Every single one of you. Maybe, Tommy said, but you're dying first. Outside, Dante's voice called out one more time. Not through a megaphone now. Just his natural voice, carrying through the port with absolute certainty.
Marco.
It ends tonight. The shipping port became a maze of death. Vincent cut Leo's restraints while Tommy kept his gun trained on Marco. Outside, gunfire echoed between metal containers like thunder in steel canyons. Men shouted, died, and fell silent while the battle raged through the shadows. "Can you walk?" Vincent asked Leo. Leo nodded, rubbing his wrists where the zip ties had cut into skin. "Where's Dante?" "Hunting." Marco laughed from where he crouched behind an overturned desk. "Hunting? He can barely stand. I saw the wounds, the blood loss. He's running on borrowed time." "More time than you've got left," Tommy said coldly. Marco's eyes darted between them, calculating. Then he moved fast, faster than a wounded man should. He grabbed a metal filing cabinet and shoved it toward Tommy, who stumbled backward on his injured leg. In that split second, Marco was up and running, crashing through a side door into the container yard. "Stay with Leo," Vincent shouted at Tommy, then charged after Marco. But Leo was already moving.
No.
"I'm not hiding anymore." He ran after Vincent into the night, Tommy cursing and limping behind them. The shipping containers created towering walls on either side, 40-foot steel boxes stacked 3 high, forming narrow corridors that twisted in every direction. The only light came from distant floodlights and muzzle flashes from the ongoing battle. Leo heard footsteps ahead, Marco, running through the maze. Then heavier footsteps following, Vincent's pursuit. Leo ran harder, his breath burning in his lungs. He turned a corner and nearly collided with one of Marco's men lying dead in a puddle of his own blood. Leo jumped over the body and kept running, following the sounds of the hunt. The corridor opened into a wider area where containers were being loaded by massive cranes. One crane sat abandoned, its operator fled or dead. Marco was climbing the crane's ladder, heading for the control cabin 30 feet up. Vincent skidded to a stop and aimed. "Get down here, Marco." Marco reached the cabin and slammed the door. A moment later, the crane roared to life. The massive hook and cable swung wildly through the air, a 5-ton wrecking ball that could crush a man instantly. Vincent dove aside as the hook smashed into the ground where he'd been standing. Sparks flew. Metal screeched against concrete. "He's lost his mind." Tommy arrived, panting, pulling Leo behind a container for cover. The hook swung again, this time hitting a container stack. The impact sent vibrations through the entire structure. One container shifted, groaned, and started to slide. "Move!" Vincent grabbed Leo and Tommy, dragging them away as the 40-foot container crashed down where they'd been standing. The sound was deafening, an explosion of twisting metal and shattering concrete. Up in the crane cabin, Marco's silhouette was barely visible, working the controls like a madman. Then another figure emerged from the smoke and shadows. Dante walked into the open area, moving slowly but steadily. His shoulder was freshly bandaged, his face pale, but his eyes burned with cold fury. He carried a gun in one hand and death in the other. "Mark?" Dante's voice cut through the chaos. "Come down and face me." Marco's response was to swing the crane hook directly at his brother. Dante didn't run. He stood perfectly still as the massive hook arced toward him, then at the last possible second, he stepped aside. The hook missed him by inches, so close the wind from its passage ruffled his hair. "You always were dramatic," Dante called up. "Just like father. Don't you dare compare me to that old fool." Marco's voice came from the crane cabin, amplified by rage. Father was weak. He let traditions and honor hold him back. I'm building something better. You're building nothing. You're destroying everything we are. We're criminals, Dante. Monsters. We don't get to pretend we have honor. Dante raised his gun and fired. The bullet sparked off the crane's metal frame, nowhere near Marco, but it made a point. Come down. End this like a man. For a moment, the port fell silent. Even the distant gunfire had ceased, Either the battle was over or both sides had stopped to watch this final confrontation between brothers. The crane engine shut off. The hooks swayed gently, settling into stillness. Marco's door opened. He climbed down the ladder slowly, gun in his hand. When he reached the ground, he walked to the center of the open area, facing Dante across 30 feet of blood-stained concrete. "You want to do this?" Marco asked. "Really? Kill your own brother?" "You killed Rosa," Dante said flatly. "You tried to kill Leo. You betrayed our family. You're not my brother anymore." "I was never your brother." Marco's composure finally cracked. "You were always father's favorite. The strong one, the smart one, the heir. I was just the spare, the backup, the one who didn't matter. So you murdered an innocent woman because you felt inadequate. I murdered her because she saw me. She saw what I was building, what I was becoming. She was going to ruin everything." Marco's hands shook, his gun wavering. "Do you know what that's like? To be invisible your whole life? To watch everyone bow to you while I get nothing?" "You had everything," Dante said quietly. "A family, a home, a place in our world. You threw it away for power you didn't earn. I earned it. Every shipment I ran, every deal I made, every body I buried while you played protector to cleaning women and street kids." They circled each other now, two predators looking for an opening. Leo watched from behind the container, his heart in his throat. This was it, the moment he'd wished for at his mother's funeral. Rosa's killer, alive, standing in front of him. But something felt wrong. The rage he'd expected to feel was there, burning hot in his chest. But underneath it was something else. Something that felt like sadness. This wasn't justice. This was just more death. "I could have loved you," Dante said, his voice breaking slightly. "You were my brother. My blood. If you'd just talk to me."
Talk. Marco laughed bitterly.
"Men like us don't talk.
We take. We kill.
We survive." He raised his gun, aiming at Dante's heart. "I'm sorry, brother, but this is survival." Dante's gun came up simultaneously. Both men, both weapons, both fingers on triggers. "Wait!" Leo's voice rang out across the port. Everyone froze. Leo stepped out from behind the container, hands raised, walking into the space between the two brothers. "Leo, get back," Dante commanded. But Leo kept walking until he stood directly between them, facing Marco. Close enough to see the tears streaming down the man's face. Close enough to see that underneath all the ambition and rage was just a broken person who'd made terrible choices. "You killed my mother," Leo said, his voice steady. "You deserve to die for that."
But he turned to look at Dante.
"My second wish," Leo said clearly, "is for you not to kill him." The world held its breath. Dante stared at Leo like he'd spoken in a foreign language. "What?" "Don't kill him," Leo repeated louder now. "That's my second wish. You promised to grant me 4 wishes. This is number 2". Marco's gun wavered, confusion replacing rage on his face. "Kid, what are you?" "Shut up," Leo snapped at him, then turned back to Dante. "You told me anything. You swore on my mother's grave. So, I'm using my wish. Don't kill Marco." Dante's face was a war of emotions, fury, confusion, and something that might have been relief. "Leo, he murdered Rosa. He tried to kill you. Justice demands." "Justice?" Leo's laugh was bitter. "You want to know what my mom would say about justice? She'd say killing Marco makes you exactly like him. She'd say blood just creates more blood until everyone drowns in it. Your mother would want him dead. My mother saved your life when Marco tried to kill you as kids." Leo's voice cracked. "She could have let you die. She could have walked away. But she chose mercy. She chose to break the cycle." Tears were streaming down his face now. "And she died because of it. Because mercy got her killed in your world." The words hung in the air like accusations. Dante's gun lowered slightly. "Then why? Why save the man who murdered her?" "Because I'm not saving him." Leo turned to face Marco fully. "I'm saving you." Marco's face twisted. "I don't need saving from some kid.
Not you, Leo said.
Him, he pointed at Dante. If he kills you, it destroys him. He'll become the monster everyone thinks he already is. He'll lose the last piece of his humanity, the piece my mother protected when she was 19 years old. Leo's voice dropped to a whisper. I won't let her sacrifice be for nothing. Dante stood perfectly still, his gun hand trembling. Around them, the loyalists and survivors of Marco's forces watched in silence, waiting to see which way their world would turn. You kill Marco, and this war never ends, Leo continued. His supporters will seek revenge. More blood, more bodies, more mothers shot in parking lots. It never stops, he looked Dante in the eyes. Unless someone chooses to stop it. And what happens to him? Dante's voice was raw. He walks free? Unpunished. No, Vincent said, stepping forward from the shadows. He held up an evidence bag containing Rosa's hidden phone. We give this to the real police.
The ones Marco didn't bribe.
We give them the surveillance footage, the ballistics reports, the financial records. We let the system handle it. The system is broken, Dante said. Then we find the parts that aren't. Vincent's face was hard. I've got contacts in the FBI, people Marco hasn't touched. They've been building a RICO case for months. They just needed evidence. We give them Marco, wrapped in a bow, with everything needed to put him away for life. Tommy limped forward, adding his voice. Boss, the kid's right. We end this the clean way, or we end up right back here in 5 years with the next Marco, the next civil war, the next dead mother. Dante looked at each of them, his men, his family, his world. Then his eyes returned to Leo, this 15-year-old boy who'd lost everything and somehow still chose mercy over vengeance. Rosa really was a hell of a woman, Dante said quietly. Raised a hell of a son. He lowered his gun completely. Marco saw his chance. His weapon came up fast, aimed at Dante's chest, finger tightening on the trigger. Leo moved faster. He grabbed a metal pipe lying in the rubble and swung it with everything he had. It connected with Marco's wrist with a sickening crack. The gun flew from Marco's hand, skittering across the concrete. Marco screamed, clutching his broken wrist. He staggered backward, tripped over debris, and fell hard. That, Leo said, breathing hard, was for my mom. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Real police this time. Vincent had made the call before they'd even stormed the port. Dante walked over to where Marco lay groaning on the ground. He looked down at his brother. This person he'd known his entire life, who'd been corrupted by jealousy and ambition into something unrecognizable. You're going to prison, Dante said. You're going to face every charge, every crime, every victim. And you're going to live with what you did to Rosa for the rest of your miserable life. Marco spat blood. You're finished, Dante. Even if I go down, your empire goes with me. The feds will tear apart everything. Good, Dante interrupted. Let them. 6 weeks later. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters, but Dante ignored them all. He stood with Leo, both of them wearing dark suits, watching as Marco was led away in chains. The trial had been swift, the evidence overwhelming. Marco Moretti was sentenced to life in prison without parole for murder, racketeering, and 24 other charges. He never looked back as they took him away. You okay? Dante asked Leo.
No, Leo answered honestly.
But I will be. They drove in silence to St. Mary's Chapel, to the cemetery behind it where Rosa was buried. Her grave had a new headstone now, expensive marble with an inscription that read, Rosa Castellano, she chose mercy. Dante had paid for it, had also paid off every debt Rosa had, set up a scholarship fund in her name, and donated $2 million to domestic violence shelters across the city. Blood money, trying to buy redemption. Leo placed flowers on the grave, her favorites, yellow roses. He knelt in the grass, hand touching the cold stone. I used 2 wishes, Mom, he whispered. Just 2. Found your killer like I promised. But I didn't let Dante kill him. I used the second wish to stop the violence, like you would have wanted. Dante stood several feet back, giving the boy privacy. But Leo could feel him there, This complicated man who'd kept his promise despite everything. What about the other two wishes? Dante asked quietly. Leo stood, brushing grass from his knees. I've been thinking about that. And my third wish, Leo said, is for you to adopt me. Legally. Make me your son. Dante's eyes widened.
Leo.
Not because I need protection. Not because I'm alone. But because Leo's voice caught. Because my mom loved you, trusted you, saw something good in you when everyone else just saw a monster. And I think maybe I see it too. Dante's hand trembled as he placed it on Leo's shoulder. I'm not a good man. I know. But you're trying to be. That counts for something. They stood together at Rose's grave as the sun set over Brooklyn, two people bound by tragedy and an impossible promise. What about your fourth wish? Dante asked. You've still got one left. Leo smiled, a real smile, the first in weeks. I'm saving that one. For what? For when we need it most. Leo looked at the man who'd become his guardian, his protector, his unlikely father. You never know when you'll need one more miracle. Dante laughed, the sound surprising them both. Your mother really did raise you right. She did, Leo agreed. She really did. They walked back to the car together. Behind them, Rose's grave stood peaceful in the fading light. Above them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. The cycle of violence had been broken, at least for now. The empire Dante had built on blood and fear was being systematically dismantled, piece by piece, replaced with legitimate businesses and charitable foundations. It wouldn't erase the past, wouldn't bring back the people who'd died, wouldn't make either of them whole again. But it was a start. Leo climbed into the car and looked back one more time at his mother's grave. He imagined her there, smiling, proud of the choice he'd made. I used my wishes for peace, Mom. Not revenge. The car pulled away, carrying them toward whatever future they could build from the ashes of the past. A mafia boss trying to become something better. A boy who'd lost everything learning to hope again. Together, they drove into the night, leaving the graveyard behind but carrying Rose's memory forward. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, mercy could still win. And sometimes that was enough.